Hi, everyone. Thanks again for joining us for another episode of the Daily BizLink. Jane Cebrynski is back, and today we're talking about introverts and extroverts. So, Jane, thanks for being here.
Thanks so much, Lindsay. Good morning. Okay, so give me a 10 moment.
My 10 moment is I am an extrovert with some introvert tendencies. However, I do thrive and I get energy off of spending time with people. Zoom just does not seem to have the same effects for me. And so I was so excited. I recently went out to our Fresno office in California. I got to spend some one-on-one time with those team members. And I just came back with so much more energy. So that was a 10 moment.
Well, congratulations. And I love that because one of the reasons I wanted to have this conversation this morning is number one, reflecting a lot on where we were at this time last year. And there were so many, you know, there were so many little memes and comments about how introverts were, loving life and welcome to my world and how extroverts were struggling and everything like that. But really, this is a topic I have become very, very passionate about in the last year or two. And it has been transformational for me in not only my personal relationships, but also professionally. And the more I have studied it, I am also an extrovert. But the more I have studied it and the more I have learned about it, it has shown up in my workouts with my clients so many times, and a lot of times too with my corporate clients and the team dynamic. So I thought we could just have a short conversation, knowing there's a lot to discuss about it. But you hit the nail on the head. The core, the core concept between introversion and extroversion is really how people recharge and how they gain energy. But it's also really interesting because science has shown us that it's also about how we process information, and our brains are actually very different.
Yeah, I think this is such a great topic. And just even knowing that we can have a little bit of both as individuals, we don't have to be 100% an extrovert or 100% an introvert. So we do like to have, we get energy off of different scenarios. So don't get me wrong. I also enjoy a little downtime, some peace and quiet from time to time as well.
Well, I think that's what's really important too, because there's so many stereotypes around it. And the fact of the matter is the majority of the population falls in the middle and what they call ambiverts. So we have those tendencies. But what's important is that just because you're an introvert does not mean that you don't like people and that you don't like to socialize. And just because you're an extrovert doesn't mean that you don't like your alone time. It's on a continuum. And it's really about, what are the best ways that we recharge? And there are some characteristic differences. And I think I've raised an introvert, and out of my three sons, and all of my love relationships from the time I was very young have been with introverts. And so I'm super fascinated about that dynamic, and knowing the differences helps to really, really understand one another. And we spend so much time in coaching talking about communication styles and how do we get better at it. And this is just one other component to consider.
So what tips do you have for getting better at identifying it and leveraging that knowledge to enhance your relationships?
So I think just by, there's a lot of different personality tests you can take out there. And I'm a believer in those, not as an end all be all, but certainly as a framework to help you understand a little bit more about who you are. And so the Myers-Briggs is, one of the ones that's been around for a really long time. And there's DISC and there's Colby. What I like about Myers-Briggs is it's pretty simple. And that can just be a starting point to helping you understand a little bit more about yourself. But then if you have your teams take it, or even families take it, you begin to understand the dynamics within your family. And when you start to recognize that the way we recharge and the way we like to spend time is different, then it minimizes judgment. And I see a lot of this play out with extroverted parents, me being one, with introverted children. And it's like, okay, wait, you're not very social. How come you don't want to go out tonight? And it's like, I'm perfectly fine. I'm really actually great. And I'm really happy just staying at home reading a book. So some of the things that if we begin to understand the dynamics between the two, it really can help in the relationship. For example, in a work environment, an introvert oftentimes, because they process information differently, might benefit more from a longer lead time. So if you put out an agenda ahead of time, or if you let them know the topics that are for consideration, they'll put the time and energy into thinking about it and come with some thoughtful ideas and consideration. At the same time, extroverts need to stop speaking sometimes and do a better job of listening, and also not feel obligated to carry the conversation. So just because an introvert isn't speaking doesn't mean that they're not engaged, that they don't care, that they're not interested. It just simply means that maybe they are saving their energy. They'll speak when they have something to contribute, or they're thinking and processing and need a little bit more time. So just that one little trick right there can change the dynamics of a meeting or a perception. What do you
I
think?
think I think this specific topic helps us to become a little bit more self-aware and mindful as we're approaching different conversations, or, putting ourselves in the shoes of other individuals that we're engaging in conversations with. So, Jane, this is all great content. It's something for us to be more mindful of as we move forward. But do you have a specific goal or tip of the week that you'd like to share with our audience?
I recommend everybody go to 16personalities.com. It's a free personality survey that you can take, and it's through Myers-Briggs. And that can just be a starting point. I know a lot of organizations do test in personality profiles and tests as a framework, but familiar with it. And also get your family involved. We evolve and change over time depending on your children. It's probably best if they're at least in the teenage years, because they're still evolving. But get your family involved, get your partner involved, and it might help explain some of the differences and challenges that you face in your relationship.
Well, and I would be curious to see if anything's changed over the course of the last year. I know I've done this on an annual basis with my team members. So maybe it's time to revisit this, because as we're looking to figure out our working from home or returning to office strategies, maybe there's something we can learn from it. So, Jane, some really good pointers there.
Yeah, and I think that's what's really important too, as we start to re-engage back into the workforce. Some people may be suffering from anxiety because they are more introverted, and this last year has really been a little bit more peaceful for them. And the extroverts are like ready to rock and roll and get back in gear. And so again, it's about minimizing the judgment and just really learning to understand one another and the differences to get the best out of everybody.
Awesome. Well, Jane, thanks again for joining us today.
Thank you.